Okay, everyone? Have your attention, please. I would like to thank you all for coming to the last of our 3 health presentations. The first 2 was on. Who can remember what the first 2 was on?
High blood pressure.
Yep. High blood pressure and cholesterol, that's correct. And the other one, which was the first one, basically it was a new start. They have different names for it. This was called 8 Secrets of Good Health, but it's a new start, basically the same general health program. So this is the last in our trilogy of presentations. Thank you all for coming. For those online, I thank you for joining us. I pray that as we go through this program of diabetes, that it will, 1, educate us. If you have it, maybe show you how to control it. If you don't have it, maybe a way of preventing it. I have no idea because I'm not presenting the program. The person who's doing that is, call him Dr. Wesley, but your first name is Wesley, isn't it? Warren. Dr. Warren. We want to thank Dr. Warren for taking the time, spending the time to come and meet us today and present this program on diabetes. Look forward to hearing what he has to say and what he has to present to us. We will have some forms to fill out for a survey form, just to say how the program was and how you found it. They'll be handed out at the end of the presentation, just for your feedback. I'm going to ask us now if we would bow our heads and we'll pray, and after which I shall hand over to Dr. Warren. Our Father who art in heaven, we thank you for keeping us thus far throughout the day, Lord. We've been blessed with spiritual food, and it'll be no different this afternoon. More with what to do with our spiritual health, Lord. We pray that you will be with Dr. Warren as he presents, and for us all, so that we may understand and take on board, so that we may be able to live a little bit more healthier. It's my prayer in Jesus' name. Just before Dr. Warren comes up, I'm going to ask the children that you do not leave the auditorium. If you need to go, you speak to an adult first, and then they will either escort you or make sure you come out, because you're not leaving here to play around outside. Because once you're outside of here, no one has visual of you, and there could be other people outside who may take advantage of that. So please stay in the auditorium at all times. Thank you. Lastly, there will be questions. You may need to ask questions. There's probably a question time near the end, or there may be questions in the middle. When you have a question, put your hand up and a mic will come to you. Because if you start talking, all the people online see is the good doctor going and answer something, and he has no idea what he was answering. So be mindful of that when you're asking a question. There's other people who will be hearing what you're saying. So put your hand up and the mic will come to you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, thanks for the introduction. Just a bit about myself, and I'm glad that the children are here as well. I'm going to do my best to make it so that you can really sort of understand. I'm just bringing it down quite a bit as well. So if you want to ask any questions, don't feel this is for adults. It's for all of us, okay? Now, I grew up in Tottenham, so brief note about myself. Some of you, when I was coming in, they recognise the face. Yeah, so I know some folks used to go Holloway. I knew, so that's why I said I recognise your face here. I was coming through the door. I grew up in Tottenham. I went to Tottenham Church. Some of you may know Holcombe Road. And then when I got married, I was at Willesden for a little bit. And then we moved up to Luton. So I've been in Luton for a little while now, sort of attending or member of the Luton North Church. For school-wise, I sort of attended. I was living first in Tottenham in a place called Broadwater Farm Estate. I don't know if you've heard of Broadwater Farm Estate. Okay, so I was living there. I went to primary school in Broadwater Farm Estate. The last 2 years of my primary school education, I went to one of our church schools. It's called Highland House, which is in Walthamstow. And then the first 2 years of my secondary education, I went to Stanborough Park. And then I went to a local school in Haringey for the last 3 years of my secondary education. That was a joy for me because I love sport, and that's all I did, sport. So I was into cricket, basketball, athletics, you name it. I was even offered to play professional cricket by a former English player, Fred Titmus. They came looking for local talent, and he said that they want to join a county. They'll pay me so much money. And I said, no, I go to churches on Saturday. And his eyes popped up. So I stuck to my principles, even though I was only 18 at the time. So then, cutting a long story short, I was working in operating theatre as an ODP, don't know if you've heard of ODA, don't know if anyone's heard of that as a profession. We work alongside the theatre nurses, where it's a specialised theatre training. And I spent most of my years, when qualified, working at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, which is in London. I became a theatre manager there before I went into medicine. So I studied medicine at St George's Medical School, which is in South London. So I was there, and then I did my junior doctor's post in Luton, where I was living. Then I've done my years was as a locum, working in medicine, elderly care medicine. And now I'm working in forensics, which is psychiatry, looking after the physical health of the patients. I've always had a big interest in natural therapy. So my television broke down. I went on me when I was, this is for the children now. My television went we didn't have phones those days, only TV, and there was only 3 stations, BBC, ITV, and BBC Two, yeah, only three stations those days. And my TV went, and my dad said he's not fixing it. And so I decided to read the books that was on the shelves there. So I was reading, I was into health. We've always been into health for some reason. So I used to read, there's these books called You and Your Health. There's 3 volumes. So I used to look at that on Sabbath. That's right, the blue ones, yeah. So Sabbath afternoons when I used to get home, I'm the only child, by the way. So I used to come home and flick through You and Your Health. Then I used to read some of Back to Eden as well. So I've always had that real interest in health. And so when I qualified, I was actually going to go and set up my own thing in sort of natural therapy. But one story to lead the other, and God was directing me in a different way. So I am where I am at the present, okay? So although we're talking about diabetes and mellitus this afternoon, so I'm going to give you an understanding of that. But you had a session on New Start for these 3 series, and so that's what we'll be sort of centering on when it comes to treatment and lifestyle. Okay, now when I come to that section, I want you to take, because there's some certain points in those sections which is very apt and meaningful that we need to take on board for today when it comes to our health. So we're looking through sort of diabetes, types of diabetes, the prevalence, causes of diabetes, diagnosis, and lifestyle. And looking at, when it comes to lifestyle, looking at the 8 laws of health there in terms of diabetes. All right, so many of us are familiar with diabetes. We know that it's a high levels of sugar in the blood, and that is because our metabolism has just gone strange for some reason or the other. So we're not metabolizing that sugar in our blood as we should do. So it either could be that the pancreas is not throwing out insulin, or it's not throwing out enough insulin, or the cells in our body is not taking in that sugar in our blood. Okay, so we call this diabetes, diabetes mellitus. So this is a picture of the pancreas. Okay, the pancreas sits just under our stomach, and it's connected to our intestine. So that bit here that's sitting at the head of the pancreas is the intestine. That leads from the stomach. So this bit here leads from the stomach. So when we eat, our pancreas goes into working mode. It kicks out what we call these protein or proteolytic enzymes that helps to break down the food, and it also kicks out insulin, and that helps for our cells to absorb the sugar when it's broken down into our bloodstream, into our cells. Okay. So, not to labor on this, I'm trying not to get too technical. Okay. So now this is just a nice simple diagram of how insulin works. So in the first, this is normal. So glucose, our body breaks down our sugars into glucose, and the glucose is in the bloodstream. So what happens then is the insulin released from the pancreas. So it's like a key for the cells. So insulin sort of locks onto our cells, opens it up and says, here's the sugar, and the sugar goes in, okay? So that's in the normal state where we're using a homeostatic state of glucose in the blood, and insulin goes into our cells. In the next one, so it's like what we call type 1 diabetes. That usually is on an onset when we're very young, okay? Type 1 diabetes now is where there's no insulin coming from the pancreas. So then we've got a lot of sugar in the blood, and in its sense, because there's no insulin, it can't open the key for the sugar to go into the cells, so it just floats around in the blood. So there's sort of symptoms that come around where you feel very thirsty. Sometimes you could be losing a lot of weight as well. And sometimes it can become a state where you become very acidotic, tummy pains. And when it becomes serious, those symptoms will be obviously manifest itself, and it's an emergency in A&E. Okay. Now the type 2, where most of us tend to develop, this one is where sometimes the insulin isn't enough that's released from the pancreas, or in a sense, when it goes to the cell to try and open it, it's not doing so. For some reason, the cell is just not opening, and we get elevated blood sugar levels. So that can be treated with medications to help kick out more insulin from the pancreas, or to help sort of open up those cells. Okay, so that's how, in a sense, the effect or physiology, in a simple way, on how we get sort of what we call high blood sugar levels. Now, just as a side note, I thought I'd just bring this in, just as a side note. Science is fantastic, isn't it, when you think about it? And none of you guys are in primary school? Primary school? Okay. Primary school. Anyone in secondary school? Secondary, okay, great. Secondary school, okay. Do you like science? So. Do you want to be a doctor? Yeah. Okay. Now, what's obviously then we need to find, so that we don't have insulin in type 1. So what's happened is that they used to get insulin from where? Do anyone know? From pigs and cows, yeah. So that's where insulin, in the early days, that's where insulin used to be derived from. But now they've managed to actually get the human insulin. It's like what we call sort of the genetic form, and they put it into this bacteria, and is able to then make what we call the human type form. So it's in a sense, the insulin that you're now using is very, very similar to the insulin that is our own bodies produce, okay, which is fantastic. So it's more purer because compared to earlier forms, as we just mentioned. So we used to have pigs and cows used to get the insulin from, but now it's such a much purer form. So there's less chance of allergies, and there's a chance of also having a great deal of this type of insulin for global sort of treatment. We can make so much of it. Okay, so that is insulin. Just a side note there. So we're looking at type 1 and type 2. So we call type 1 is an autoimmune type condition. So when you say autoimmune, it means that our cells in our body, our own cells in our body, that helps to keep us safe and from sort of infections. It starts attacking itself. So it's attacking these cells in the pancreas. And so that's why there's the destruction of those cells in the pancreas. It only happens that for children, generally. Now, anyone got any ideas why? Just as a thought. Why only children? Why not as adults you get type 1? Although you can do, but generally as children tend to get type 1. Just as a thought. Have anyone ever thought about it? Just of interest. Sweets. Okay. That's okay. Okay.
I've forgotten the rule about
Okay, because sweets has a lot of what you call, additives and so forth. So are these kind of things working on the body as a child? And because as we're developing, I'm not disputing that as developing, but there has been a hypothesis. I'm not going to say what, all right? But I'm going to say you can do some research on here.
Is it maybe something that the mother has passed to the child through her blood?
Right. Not quite, yeah, but there is something sometimes. I tell you what, you can Google it, and there's a book called The China Studies. Okay, let me leave it at that because I don't know, because it can be kind of controversial. But the American Society of Pediatrics have sort of acknowledged as well in terms of the possibility of why it's causing children autoimmune disease. Okay, so you can look at China study. And you can take a look at that as well. Okay.
Epigenetics.
Okay. All right. Okay. Right. Okay. Not. Yeah. Yes or no. Right. All right. Okay. But I know one of my colleagues, which you know very well, he's done a presentation on dairy, okay? And I know there's a bit of a kickback in terms of that sort of presentation, but I think you know where I'm going when I say dairy. Okay, so now we're going to go type 2 diabetes, a chronic condition that develops slowly over time. So when we get older, generally we develop type 2 diabetes. No. So this is interesting. I'm going to ask another question shortly, because we're going to go on a sort of journey here together, okay? So type 2 is a sort of chronic condition, and it develops over time. So with type 2, the body doesn't use insulin properly, creating a high blood sugar level that needs to be monitored, okay? So type 1 and type 2, you can get some kind of overlap. So type 2, in terms of that middle there, it can cause other serious health problems and complications. Both of them can do that. Requires a healthy lifestyle and medical supervision. Both of them does that, and symptoms include thirst, frequent urination, and blurred visions. That's one of the sort of symptoms. You've got many symptoms with diabetes. There's just one type or one of those symptoms when it's not controlled very well. Okay, so now this is interesting, and this is where I want us to do this together, okay? So now, diabetes, look at this. In 1980, okay, around the world, we had 108 million adults worldwide had diabetes. That's 4.7% of the global population, okay, 1980. And by 2021, had risen to 537.5 billion people, adults. That's 10.5%. So in what we call 40 years, it 5 times it's increased. And by 2045, we're saying that we're going to have 784 million adults. What do you think is causing that then? There's no let up, it's just getting worse. From 1980 to now. I just wonder if you've had any thoughts on it. What could be?
Our diet has changed. We're not eating fresh food like we used to when we were younger, and we're not as active.
Is there any influence, do you think, in terms of our diet?
Media, society.
Right. Okay. All right.
Processed foods?
Yep, for sure. Definitely so.
Better way of monitoring?
Better way of monitoring.
Monitoring who has diabetes and who hasn't.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll give you that one. That's true. There is. Anyone of you guys as well, do you think? Any children, do you think why we got so much diabetes now? Have you got any ideas? Because this is going to really be pertaining to us as children as well.
Lifestyle.
Yeah, lifestyle. And in terms of what type of lifestyle do you think could be causing this? Because I think folks have hit on it as well.
I think our lifestyle is more sedentary right now than before.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. And our high street has changed quite a lot, hasn't it? Our high street has changed quite a lot, hasn't it?
I was going to say hidden sugars, because quite often we don't even realize that there's sugar in some of the things that we're eating, and we think it's quite healthy.
Yeah.
But actually it has a lot of sugar.
That's right, yeah. So there's a lot of hidden terms of the type of foods we're eating. There's a lot of hidden ingredients that's not obviously has a negative impact on our body. But when I say our high street has changed a lot, I remember 1980, still at school, and there's certain, my high street changed, and I was entering a Pacific restaurant quite often, and nowadays, that Pacific restaurant as well, and these restaurants are in almost every street corner. Okay, we'll talk about that a bit later. So when it comes to us in the UK, it's saying by 2030, 5.5 million people, and that is a lot. So that's 1 in 10 of us. So 1 in 10 of us, how many of us is in here? Say there's about 20 of us in here, so 2 of us will have diabetes. Okay, so 5.5 million, so that is an escalation. So is diabetes hereditary? Doesn't mean that, so if your dad or if your mum had diabetes, you'll definitely be having diabetes. Is that the case? So here we have a little cartoon. Do you like cartoons? It's okay, I'll get these guys to tune in. That's all right, yes, brilliant. Do you guys like cartoons? Yeah, no, not really. No, nor did I actually, funny enough. Yeah, so anyway, we got a cartoon of mum and dad. Mum's got diabetes, dad's got diabetes, and we got the little boy in the middle. Well, what's going to happen to him as he gets older? So is it really sort of hereditary? Now, this is a lady. Okay, this is my mum. Now, yeah, that's me. Okay, all right. So her sister, older sister, so the first one in her sibling group, they had diabetes. Her brother, who's younger than her, 2 brothers down, he's got diabetes. And I think even say a brother that was after her had diabetes. But she was never diagnosed with diabetes. Okay, so then I sat down and thinking, well, and her mum died quite young, early, with diabetes as well. All right, so I said to myself, well, strong family connection, and mum never had diabetes. That was very, I started thinking, well, what was this? So I started looking at her lifestyle. I thought, oh, this is interesting. So she would have breakfast, okay? Then she would have lunch, and and that was it. Okay, she wouldn't. If you asked her to eat something again in the evening, that's it. She shut off. And just after she had lunch and she's finished what she's doing, that rest of the day was a rest for her. She was a seamstress back in Antigua, and then she was what we call quality control in MK in Edmonton when she was working. So that was her lifestyle, and she never had diabetes. And she used to walk down to the bus stop, walk it home to where we're living on the Broadwater Farm. So spent quite a bit of walking and only eating 2 meals a day. Okay, interesting, isn't it? Okay, all right. So let's develop on that a bit later. We're going to develop on that. And you would have thought, and all the siblings who had diabetes, they were living in the Caribbean. Okay, so they were living in the Caribbean, but she was living here. She never developed diabetes, although it was very strong in her family. Okay, so let's develop on that a little bit later. Okay, so these are what we call modifiable risk factors and non-modifiable risk factors. Okay, So modifiable risk factors is all that we talked about earlier on, being that someone said it over here, not being physically active. I think that's what you said, yeah. That's quite right. The type of food that we're eating as well, in terms of we're eating probably too much and putting on weight, high blood pressure, smoking, and this is an interesting one, medications as well can bring on diabetes. Can you name me one medication that can bring on diabetes? Now, we're going to have to be careful here because there's a specific medication that is very useful in terms of why it's used, but still at the same time it can bring on diabetes. Do you know which one it is? And it's a medication that you can't just stop. So I'm not saying here that because it brings on diabetes and, oh, my goodness, I need to stop it, because it's very useful in terms of if it's prescribed, if anyone's taking it, it's important that you continue taking it. But obviously, it's always we always monitor if you are sort of prescribed this specific. Anyone got an idea which medication? There are a few, but there's one specifically that.
I don't know. Is it for cholesterol?
Right. So it's steroids. Okay. So steroids. So steroids. Sometimes we use steroids for different aspects of medical care, for certain therapies. But that one, so I'll never forget when I was a medical student. I was sitting in outpatients. I think it was a neurology outpatients. I was sitting behind the consultant, and the patient came in. It was a young black guy. He came and sat down, and he demanded from the consultant some steroid therapy because he said he thinks that it's going to help his condition. So the consultant was reluctant and said, no, we can try and do something differently. But he was persistent. The consultant didn't even turn around to me. He said, you tell him the side effects. So I started listing them. I said diabetes, high blood pressure, osteoporosis, and then his eyes were opened up and said, okay, don't bother. Don't bother. But I'm not saying that if you're on steroids, you shouldn't, and that's those who are listening, you should maintain your steroids, because I've heard people stopping just like that, and it becomes quite fatal. So be careful. But it is monitored. If you're on steroids for any reason, it is monitored. But it's just one of those side effects. Then we call sort of non-modifiable effects as we get older. So when we're 45, generally 30 and upwards, we can develop diabetes. Okay, and there's other sort of family history as well is in there. But as I said, my mum never developed it, although she had a strong family history. So this is a diagnosis of diabetes. So we have a fasting glucose. So sometimes some of you, I don't know if you still may be sort of tested from time to time, or if you do have diabetes, you may have been tested for it. They may say like fast overnight. And if your blood levels is 7 and over, you can be diagnosed with diabetes if you have symptoms. Okay, if you don't have symptoms and your blood sugar levels are 7 and over, you have it repeated. Likewise, you have another type of measurement called HbA1c, and that measures our blood sugar levels over 3 months. And again, if your levels come over to 48 and above, you're diagnosed as diabetic. If you've got symptoms, yes, you're diagnosed there and then. If not, we do repeat it in 3 months' time. If you're between 42 and 48, so 43 to 47, that's called pre-diabetes. Likewise, 6.1 to 6.9 is pre-diabetes as a fasting state. And so then you just need to sort of modify your lifestyle to bring that or to make changes. Do you believe that diabetes can be reversed? Yeah? Okay, that's a strong yes, which is good. All right, okay, so, right, and we'll get to that shortly. So this is the thing that we need to be really wary of in terms of the complications with diabetes. Okay, so we have what we call microvascular and macrovascular complications with diabetes. So the microvascular is the eyes, where we talked about the blurred visions, also having affecting your vessels at the back of your eyes, affecting the vessels in your kidney, and also affecting your nerves in your hands and your feet as well. Likewise, your heart, brain for the macrovascular system and the extremities as well. So it's something that you have to be controlled, or we can end up with what we call sort of serious complications. So it's not something that we should sort of like be very flippant about when we do have diabetes, and we really need to consider how do we manage our condition, okay? So this is where I'm just going to flip by. So we got lifestyle modifications. So when you've diagnosed with diabetes and you've got HbA1c of 48, but it's less than 53, generally you're given lifestyle advice. When it's above 53, we start considering medication. And the first line is metformin. Many of you have probably heard of that specific medication. And then you've got a line. So if it's going up your blood sugar levels, that it's not controlled, you get added in different types of what we call hypoglycemics. And it can get to a point where you're then treated as well with insulin, even as a type 2. And then you're monitored 3 monthly, depending on how severe the diabetes. And that's with a finger prick test. Now we have sensors as well now that you do put on your skin, and that can give you ongoing levels of your blood sugar levels, which is fantastic. So science is really sort of improving on a sort of like almost on a daily basis, I must say, for want of a better sort of expression. Okay. So now let's get into the heart of matter. Okay. Yes. Yeah. That's probably a better way to do it. Yeah, there's aspects of science. So the only thing as well now, so we're getting really better understanding of how to diagnose certain conditions. But one thing that you can probably think about is that we're probably not even sort of getting there yet in terms of how do we cure. Okay, so science is fantastic in some ways, but in terms of cure in a lot of our diseases, we're still scratching our head, okay? Now, 8 laws of physical health and how this pertains to diabetes. So we're quite familiar with the 8 laws of health. We know that, I don't need to go through that. We're hearing it. Even I would say since the pandemic lockdown, if you haven't been hearing about the 8 laws of health, I wonder what we've been doing, because I think this has been really sort of drummed into us left, right, and centre in more ways than one. Okay, so just in case of anyone who's listening and not familiar, we have, when we use a mnemonic, new start, we have nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, which could be self-control, air, rest, and trust in God. Those are what we call the 8 laws of health. And we're going to go through these slightly in order. Now, here we go. Now, do you know this guy? Anyone? Have you heard of What the Health? Okay, so anyone ever seen this documentary, What the Health? No, this is Neil Bernard. Okay, so Dr. Neil Bernard is a real guru in terms of diabetes and how it affects us. It's fantastic to listen to. So anyone got any spare time, just Google, or YouTube, Neil Bernard. But I would say, if you watch this documentary, you'll watch it over and over. I've watched it several times. It's amazing. It's a fantastic documentary. And it gives you an aspect in terms of, where we are and why we are where we are in terms of our health and chronic disease, okay, and how we can turn it around. This is it's unbelievable documentary. I don't think anything can ever surpass it, and it's just a fantastic watch. Okay, it's a young man who, Neil Bernard, yeah. So he didn't produce the documentary. He reported. He was one of the doctors who reported on it. But it was a young man in California who went round. It's a sort of private investigation. Or private, not private investigation. It's not the word private. What's the word? It's just he was an investigator, and he just wanted to know a bit more what's going on in terms of health and so forth. And it's, as I said, he did a fantastic job there. Can't remember his name, but please, if you get time, even young people, if you get time, please watch it. You'll do yourself a lot of favor. Okay, so when we think about food. And when we think about young people, when you think about food, what do you think about what's on the screen at the moment? Yummy. Yeah. It's nice. It looks nice, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah, it looks nice. Look nice? Yeah. So generally when we think about food, these are the sort of things that come to our mind. We say food, so if we're going to have a social, you're going to think, oh, what we're going to do, how can we feed the children? So we think about hot dogs, okay, obviously vegetarian hot dogs, okay, and we're going to think about chips. So these are the things we automatically think of. Yeah? Although there's no denial, this stuff. So when we think about food and social, there's pizza, chips, vegetarian hot dogs. This is what we go for with the ketchup and so forth. That is the go-to first thing that comes to our mind when it comes to social. Yeah. Okay, right. So likewise, we need something to go with the social, and we have these as well. We have these kind of dainties with the social. Now, when it comes to our own food that we eat on a daily basis, okay, we have jollof rice and chicken, okay, and this is when we're thinking about our daily food, our daily intake, what we have, what we cook with, and this is something that we do on a daily basis. That's no issue, okay. Likewise, we may have some rice and peas and chicken. That's no issue as well, okay. And sometimes we may have delicious patty there, juice patty, okay, juicy patty, yeah. Yeah, so it's, I can even give an experience where, because when I go to Jamaica for a break, I stay with my sister-in-law, and every time I go, I say, if it doesn't come off the tree or come out of the ground, I'm not eating it, okay? And I have that as my, honestly, when I come back, I feel unbelievable. I feel like a new person. I'll never forget, I went down there again, I said, that's it, again, it's got to come out of the ground, off the tree, or I'm not eating it. And then we had a fantastic breakfast. We had callaloo, we had yam, we had green banana, we had some ackee, and that was our breakfast. It was fantastic, and I felt like I didn't really need to eat again until 5 o'clock, but we went down to Savlamar, and we sort of driving into a car park, and my brother-in-law said, Wesley, you want some lunch now? And I was going to say no. And there was a juicy patty shop there. And he said, he wants a juicy patty? I said, Then I was looking at the shop, and there was some really glistening mangoes at the bottom by the doorway. And I said, really, I should really go for the mangoes. And I was looking at this, and he's looking at me, and I was looking at the mangoes, because I knew what my agenda was. And sometimes we've got a weakness, haven't we? I end up getting juicy patty, I end up getting the patty. But that was my honest slip up, I think, on that holiday, on that break. But when we think about food, we don't really think about this, do we? This is something that we don't really think about. You do? That's great. Okay. So here we have a plate of what we call plant-based food, okay? Cauliflower, we have tomato, we have the pulses, we have cabbage, avocado there. It's fantastic in terms of its makeup and the health and the vitality we get from this. Now, the one thing so that is what we call food, but we're going to do a social. We don't think about this really, do we? It's going to be far from our minds, unfortunately. But maybe one day we'll come round to it, that when we think of social, we'll think of something that'll be nutritious, maybe one day. But to be serious now, Hippocrates, he made this statement. He was really sort of known as the father of medicine. And it's a powerful statement he made. And if we just think about it, if we were to really think about it on a daily basis, whatever we put in our mouth is going to have a real benefit to our body. And when we see that benefit, we'll obviously sort of see through it, that we'll make sure that what we're eating will have a benefit to our body. And it'll be, so our food will be like it's a real medicine to us. We'll be doing a lot better if we have that kind of mindset. And we're going to have to. I've said we're going to have that mindset like yesterday. Okay? We're going to have that kind of mindset like yesterday. And also try and get your children to turn around to thinking more healthy as well. It's important. I can't stress how important I'm making this statement is, okay? Right. So, one key thing, all right? Let me just see if I'll just answer that question here. All right, so I'll answer that question. Now, when it comes to eating healthily, unfortunately, because of the way our soil has been really sort of overproduced in terms of our crops and so forth, the nutrition that we're getting from the soil is really depleted. So we do need what we call whole foods supplements. And there's a massive difference between whole food supplements and synthetic supplements, okay? So synthetic supplements actually do injurious to your body, and you should stay away from synthetic supplements like a barge pole. But whole food supplements is a totally different ball game altogether. So this is what we call a whole food supplements. It's moringa, and you've got different types of green powders, such as wheatgrass, barley grass, chlorella, spirulina. These are all what we call whole food supplements. Spirulina and chlorella are seaweed, they come from seaweed, and moringa, barley grass are sort of like grass type of product. So moringa is fantastic in terms of it's packed with nutrients. Very, very much packed with nutrients. It's something that you can, it's a green powder you can mix into your water, mix into any sort of like drink, and have that daily basis. And you're getting really good nutrition from this specific substance. Likewise, with diabetes, these type of vitamins as well you should be arming yourself with. So it's vitamin D, okay, vitamin B complex, chromium, vitamin C, magnesium, zinc, and coenzyme Q10. Okay, these type of supplements. Now, there's very few companies that do whole food vitamins. Can you name me one, if you've got any ideas, of a whole food supplement company that do these vitamins? Anyone got any ideas? No. Okay. So there are companies called Viridian. Have you heard of Viridian? Okay. Wild Nutrition. Yeah. Okay. Terra Nova. So these companies, you should really buy in or purchase in any form of vitamin from, because these are what you call whole food. So it's actually sort of a concentrated natural food source that you're getting or taken in. All right? Okay.
So where do you get the moringa?
So moringa, you can get that from Baldwin's is Whole Foods. Well, sorry, it's a whole health food shop in Elephant Castle, but they also do it online, so you can purchase the moringa from them online as well. And even say that's the Barrett's, Holland Barrett's. They sell moringa as well. I think, yeah, they do.
Were you asking for brand name companies?
Yeah, so yeah, that's right, I was.
So Herbalife?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But what we're looking for when it comes to whole food supplements, because supplements, they generally have what we call binders and anti-caking agents. And if you look into a lot of supplements that are synthetic, they have an anti-caking agent called titanium dioxide. And titanium dioxide is carcinogenic. And a lot of supplements, synthetic supplements, have titanium dioxide in there. So you kind of, if you're taking this day in, day out, you're actually just doing yourself more harm than good. So it's always good to stick to what we call whole food supplements. Okay. So these are the list of supplements that should be taken, especially if you're diabetic. Even if you're not diabetic, to be honest with you, these are very useful to be taken on a daily basis. So I take a vitamin D, I take B complex, I take magnesium on a daily basis, and I take what we call multivitamin from Viridian as well. So this is what I do on a daily basis. Right, so again, so walking, we know that when we walk, that we have these what we call really in the back of our legs, these valves, big valves that sends blood up and it pumps lymph out. So all these waste gets pumped out. So the best form of exercise that we can take part in or do is walking. That is the best form of exercise. And say 30 minutes, 5 days a week is fantastic for really turning your health around. Immune system being really sort of heightened up in terms of you're strengthening the immune system, and you're feeling better yourself as well, feeling better physically and mentally as well. Now, the other form of exercise that equal to it, I would say, is what we call rebounding. I don't know if anyone does rebounding in here. Rebounding is another form of exercise that's probably equal to walking as well. It does the same thing. So when you're doing what we call the health bounce on there, just a gentle bounce, you are, again, taking up all that lymph and that waste out of the system. And again, you feel a lot better. And you're detoxifying yourself as well with rebounding. So that's something that you can consider. If you find it difficult to walk, especially as we come to winter month, that's another option that you can take on board. Okay. Now, water as well. Water has got many benefits, as we may be aware of. We'll just move on to the sunshine now. So when you said that, why should we take on board how serious we should be today in terms of our health? In the pandemic, they did some studies and found that those who had a vitamin D level which was adequate in terms of the amount of vitamin D within their body, they did a lot better than those who had a very low vitamin D levels. Okay, so it just goes to show that even say when we're walking out in the sunshine, but our environment, we're inside more so than outside, so we're not getting the sunshine as we ought to. So even say the patients I look after, they're obviously inside more so. So when I check their vitamin D levels, a lot of them are even what we call deficient. So there's two levels that we call insufficient and deficient. A lot of them are deficient, which means it's under a specific amount that we really should be. And so we have to give them like a boosted dose of vitamin D. And there's many types of ailments that comes with vitamin D levels. So what we're doing when we're taking vitamin D, we're trying to do what the sun does naturally in terms of when it creates vitamin D through our skin and into our bloodstream. So there are so many positive effects of sunlight and also vitamin D levels. So although we know from years before that vitamin D levels helps with the absorption of calcium, but what we know now is that seems to also has a balance in our hormones, and we're finding that it's got a lot more benefits to our bodies than previously. So adequate amounts of vitamin D is also important. Okay. So why today is because we know, and the Bible does tell us that pestilences will come. So we've seen one pestilence. Okay. So why should we be? So they all get worse. So if I just say to you, in 2007, what did we have then? What pestilence was it then? 2007. We've forgotten. So that it came and went. So it's swine flu.
Swine flu.
So it's swine flu. So it came and went. And came and went. Probably we probably don't even have any sort of effect on it because it didn't have such a devastation in terms of a lockdown and so forth as what did COVID. So it seems to be worsening as each time goes by. So what I'm trying to say here is that if we need to be looking after ourselves because we don't know what's coming, okay? And the Bible just says there was such a time as never was or what? Ever shall be. But Michael will stand for his people. So he'll stand for his people who are what? Looking after themselves. Following God's principles. So if you're following God's principles, God will do the rest for us. You understand? You get what I'm saying? Okay. So it's important that we really take heed in terms of really looking after our health. Now, where did this come from? Where does breakfast, lunch, and dinner comes from? Anyone? It's the States. Okay. Anyone else? Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Someone said McDonald's. Anyone else? One more?
The media?
Right. No one knows. No one knows. No one knows where breakfast, lunch, and dinner came from. It's just been adopted. So some people think it's actually come from the food industry. Because obviously if you got breakfast, then you need to have your cereal, then you need to have your lunch, and then your dinner. So some people they think it's from the food industry. But what was worse still is that you've got breakfast and then you've got snack in between lunch. So I'm working at one, and then likewise, between lunch and dinner, you've got a snack again. So I'm working at one place, and it's an elderly care unit. And when I come in, they were just finishing off their breakfast. And then 3 hours later, they're getting ready for lunch. But in between those 3 hours, at 10 o'clock, they were having a snack, biscuit and tea. And then at lunchtime, they're starting getting ready for the lunch. then they have their lunch, and around about 2:30, 3 o'clock, they have their biscuit and tea again. And at 5 o'clock, they're preparing again for their evening meal. So they had, how many meals is that? They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meals. And then obviously, and in the evening as well, just before they go to bed, they have some biscuit and tea again. So that's 6 meals there, okay? So hence, we have escalation in terms of chronic disease, okay? But we do these things because we kind of, we adopt a system of behavior because we just do it because we don't think about it. And God says that I'll bring knowledge to you before I come back. So the knowledge shall increase in many ways, more ways than one. Okay? So God is opening our eyes in terms of how we can look after our body. Right? So this is what's happening. So what should happen in our bodies is that when we eat, we should then have a period where that food is digested. So insulin, when we eat, insulin gets kicked out, okay? And that takes up the sugar in our blood, goes into our cells, and then that debates, and then there's another hormone called glucagon. That comes in because it says, oh, there's no food in the body. It then comes in and tries to take food from other sources like our fat cells and so forth. And so that goes to make sure that we, obviously because we need glucose for our brain, so glucagon comes in. So we should have a cycle of insulin, glucagon, insulin, glucagon. So glucagon comes in after a meal, after about 5 hours. So if you look at those folks who are described, they never see the light of day. Of glucagon is never seen the light of day. So, okay, so all they're seeing is insulin, 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 insulin. That's all they're seeing is insulin. So that cycle of insulin, glucagon never comes around, okay? And I only realized how injurious to our body that is until I came across this information, okay? So we call back eating quantity of food. Now let me start with this information. This is, if anything that I've said, okay, this afternoon, it's gone over your head or forgotten, take note of this, okay? The next 5 minutes, just please take note of, okay? So back to Eden. This is something, as I said, I used to really enjoyed reading. As a young person, it's no harm in reading books. I know we've got it in our thing, but it's good to read. It gives us knowledge. Knowledge is power. Okay, great. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, knowledge is power. Okay. So I read there's a chapter in this called fasting. Now, Jeff O'Closs, the person who wrote this book, he went on an outing and he saw someone wasn't having a meal. He was by himself, so he went to the person and said, do you care to join me? I've got enough food. And the person said, oh, thank you, but it's okay, because I'm fasting today. So Jeff O'Closs said to him, why are you fasting? He said, I suffer from rheumatoid arthritis. And now there's rheumatoid arthritis and there's osteoarthritis. Do you know the difference between the two? Okay, so rheumatoid arthritis, again, is a type of condition where your own body cells, your immune system, is attacking in your body, thinking it's foreign. So you get really pain in your joints, okay, pain in the knees, both sides. Osteoarthritis is like some footballers, they're playing football a long time, and they'll get knee pain, probably this side, or knee pain that side. Or if you're a tennis player, as you're getting older, you probably get pain in the side. So it's just pain in the joint pain. Osteoarthritis is different. Rheumatoid arthritis is different because it's an autoimmune disease, okay? So it's called an autoimmune disease. So he said he suffered from autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and he said that this person told him not to eat anything for 2 days of the week. And he said he put that into practice, and he said since he put that into practice, he hasn't suffered, he hadn't had any flares from his rheumatoid arthritis. And so Jeff O'Closs asked him, well, who's this person? He said he only saw him once, and he never saw him again, but it's really sort of helped him with that, okay? So in today's term, they call this the 2-5 protocol, okay? Now, this person, 2016, this person, he won the Nobel Prize in Physiology of Medicine because he discovered something called autophagy, meaning that after 12 hours of we not eating, our body has used up all its glucose stores, and it then starts breaking down fats because we need to keep on alive. So how we keep on alive is our body uses its fat cells, ketones, and then that fuels our brain and fuels our body. And he said from 12 hours onwards, up to say 16, our body starts self-correcting, self-healing. Our body looks around and says, oh, there's an issue here, it needs fixing.
That's excellent, isn't it?
Yeah.
Time to do what I should be doing.
Okay. Now, if we read Diet and Council of Health, Sister White encourages 2 meals a day. The only way you're going to get a 16-8 is a 2 meal a day, meaning that you have your breakfast, then you have your lunch or just after lunch, then you don't eat again till breakfast. What you're doing there is you're bringing that autophagy into your body into play. So my mother said, Mom never had diabetes, her older sister had, younger sister had. She weren't doing this because of what she read in Back to Eden or what they discovered in 2016. She was just doing it because it was her lifestyle, but she didn't have any diabetes. You understand what I'm saying? So her body was in a self-state of healing purely because of her lifestyle. So a lot of chronic diseases and what we suffer with comes on the place in terms of how we live in our habits.
The eating twice a day, that is what they now call intermittent fasting.
Yeah, so it's now what's happened now, is like we've had, I want to say it's not a hijack because it's become, it's sort of like, they call it intermittent fasting, 16-8 intermittent fasting. And so this is, so rather, to me, what should be really sort of the strength of this specific concept is how it heals our body, how the benefits it is to our body in terms of when we do this type of lifestyle, in terms of how we eat and how frequently we eat. I think when we come from that, and I suppose it doesn't come from that because it'd be difficult to do so in our day and age. Okay. Unfortunately.
Okay, I have 2 questions to ask. One is, are there some work one can be doing that will require the person to be to eat more than 2 times a day? Are there some work that maybe requires energy that would make someone to eat more than 2 times a day? Because if that person eats in the morning breakfast, maybe eat around 4 or 5, right? You know, then the person, before long, that person will be hungry. That is number 1. Number 2, I don't know whether it's, I don't know how the people who come up with this idea that one of my friends had low sugar, you know. I don't know what they call it, but then he was asked to be eating, you know, make sure that he eats regularly so that it will help him. So how do we reconcile all this, please?
Yeah, so that's gone out the window now for some while. That advice for diabetics of eating often, that went some time ago, and it's been told that you should eat a good, proper, nutritious meal. So that has changed. Also, if you look at even, say, folks, say, from the Caribbean who used to work land, and quite vigorous work, before they went to work, they had a good dinner. So if you have cereal in the morning, Rice Krispies, Weetabix, or any one of these, trust me, by 10 o'clock, if you eat at 8, 10 o'clock, you're gasping for some food because it has nothing, there's no pull on it, okay? So we're going to need to be, as I said, when I had that real provision that morning, you know, the green banana, the yam, the ackee, the callaloo, I didn't feel like eating again till 4 or 5 o'clock. Even when I came home, they said, "Oh, there's some soup here." Unfortunately, I didn't mess it up with this juice patty. Right? So at the same time, I'm saying that you don't need or don't feel the need to eat again. So I have a good meal in the morning. I have dinner in the morning. That's what I do before I leave to go work. I don't feel like eating something until 3 o'clock in the afternoon again. So I'm getting the right nutrition. So the protein helps to keep us self-satiety. There's certain foods that we call high glycemic. Okay, so the foods that I showed you that we eat every day, the rice and peas, the jollof rice and so forth, it's very high in terms of glycemic. So you're going to want what you're going to crave for food after eating that. After say 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours time, you're going to want food because it shoots up our insulin levels, just like the bread with the hot dogs and so forth. The blood, they shoot up our insulin levels. So shortly after, just a few hours later, that's why even these shops on the high streets now, the well-known shops on the high streets, it has a revolving door. People go in there and they buy their burgers, they buy their chips. 2 or 3 hours later, they're back again in there because it shoots up your insulin levels, and then you just feel like you need to eat again. So we just need to make sure that we're having food that is nourishing to the body, and it also has what we call a societal effect. And if we do feel peckish, because if we're not eating, well, sort of a handful of nuts is more or less so effective to help us rather than having another massive big meal again. Okay. But that's something that can be talked about in some reasonable questions that you have posed there. All right, so I'll just move on quickly. So the benefits of autophagy, it's healthy aging, and people think, although you may be 70, people think that you're 60, or people think you're 50. It has a fantastic effects in terms of the way you look, the way you feel, energy levels and so forth, in terms of intermittent fasting. So it's the benefits of autophagy, which is really sort of intermittent fasting. And there are different aspects to intermittent fasting. I talked about the 5-2, where that person was not eating 2 days of the week. So you would probably not eat, say, the Monday and not eat the Thursday. So you usually have 2 days in between. And that was effective in terms of health as well. They've seen that there's a fantastic benefits to your health, and they've discovered that recently in terms of what's going on there. So someone spoke to this man way back then in 2030 to say, this will help you in terms of your autoimmune disease. But we didn't know anything about what was going on until 2016 when this chap, the Japanese professor, discovered what is actually taking place in terms of when our body is in a fasting state. Okay, so our body's in a self-healing mode there. So that's the temperance, 2 Peter, which talks about self-control. Now, sleep is another form that we need, that needs to be obviously aspect of our 8 to 12, and we need, in that sort of light blue, we need these sleep cycles, we need to make sure that that is at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times that we're having that deep form of sleep within our sleep cycle. So if we're going to bed around 10, waking up about 6, we want these sort of what we call deep sleep cycles, and we have a pattern of what we call REM sleep, light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep. And there are many things that we can do to develop a good sleep. Because one thing that we all have problems with, a lot of us do, is how we do sleep and sleep well. And so these are 5 ways to improve our sleep. Stop napping during the day. It depends on what you're doing, though. Avoid screen time at night. So sometimes as children and then even as adults, we've got the screen in front of us before we're to bed. But that has an impact on our sleep because our mind is still racing away when they get a chance to dysregulate. Okay. Now, just sort of the last slide here. Loma Linda, and all of you know that this is one of the blue zones. So the different areas where the World Geographical Society has done some research in terms of all of these blue zones. And they took the Loma Linda area in California, South California, and they looked at the Adventist population in Loma Linda. And they said that they live in 10 years longer than most Americans, and with little chronic disease. And that's chronic disease meaning cardiac health disease, chronic health disease, and also type 2 diabetes mellitus. So these types of chronic diseases were little within this area, just purely because of their lifestyle. Okay, any questions? Any further questions?
You spoke about you ate yam and dasheen and stuff for breakfast, but in reality, one, we don't have time to do that. And 2 years ago, we were told eating so much yam and stuff was too starchy for your diet.
So, and I was on holiday. Not to say that I don't do that now. Yeah. So there is a thing about eating too much starchy food as well. So you're quite right there. But if you look at, say, the African continent, where that's their meal, diabetes isn't so prevalent within what you call the countryside areas where they're living off this type of food. So there is something to be said in terms of what type of starch we're eating. So when it comes to rice is a high glycemic, and it sends our blood sugar levels quite high. So that's something you need to consider. It should be really brown rice, or the other types of grains like quinoa, bulgur wheat, and so forth. These are much full and has a protein, better protein, and low glycemic levels as well.
Are you recommending that we have our main meal in the morning and then a smaller meal in the afternoon?
Yeah, so I have a good solid meal in the morning, okay, and in the afternoon I'm having a salad with sort of protein within that salad as well. So it may be chickpeas in the salad, it may be other types of pulses in the salad, or it may be tofu in the salad. So I'm having the protein as well within the salad as well. So that's something to give me to that society. If you just like have a salad, a normal salad, you'll find, trust me, by sort of 2 or 3 hours, you're going to want to eat again. So you need to have substances in there that will give you that satiety, that satisfaction that you've had a good meal. Yeah, so generally I'll have, before I came here, I had quinoa, had tofu pieces, had black beans, had some cabbage, red cabbage, and I had some flaxseed oil over that, and I had some hemp seed shells over that as well. So that's what I had before I came here. Okay.
So you mentioned red cabbage twice during your presentation.
Yeah.
Is that better than normal cabbage? As in green cabbage?
I think they have the same kind of nutritional content. So cabbage in itself has fantastic nutritional benefits. Being red, it's got so many more types of vitamins in there, possibly than the white. So when you have color within your vegetables, they have different types of vitamins within those color types of vegetables.
I'm sorry, this might be difficult for you to answer, but I know that there are lots of children, we've got lots of children here, but I know that there are lots of children who would not eat what you eat for dinner. They're not going to have the red cabbage, they don't like onion, they don't like tomato, they don't like carrot. There's just no way of getting them to eat these foods. I'm just wondering whether or not they could drink it instead of eating it.
Oh yeah.
So they could get the nutrient.
Yeah, that's another way. That's a very good thought as well. Yeah, it's a very good thought, because I'll never forget one, when I was in the Caribbean again, the West Indies, I was in the market and this chap had some banana and pawpaw, some ripe pawpaw, and he had a blender, and he blended the banana and the pawpaw, and man, that was unbelievable drink. It was just so nice. I'm sure the children enjoy that as well, and so powerfully nutritious at the same time. So that's a good way to do it. And even say carrot juice is very nice, very tasting as well. So that's another sort of good way. And it's really sort of training the taste buds, because when you're used to eating sugar, it's very difficult. You have to sort of give it up slowly, and it's very difficult to sort of give it up just like that. So it's just a way of, because it's just our our lifestyle, we've been tuned in that way, so it's just really just trying to retuning it into a different way of living, really.
Is supplementing in like nutrients the same as getting vegetables?
Sorry, come again?
Is supplementing in like vitamins the same as vegetables?
Well, the only reason why I say supplementing, good question. Now, the only reason why I say supplementing is because our vegetables, when it's grown, the soil has been, because it's over-farmed, our soil is depleted, so we're not really getting it as really effective in our vegetables as we should be in terms of its nutrient content. So it's sometimes better for us as well to supplement with whole food supplements, not synthetic supplements. So it's better that way. But it's also better. Okay, let me tell you let me give you some real examples here. All right, so I had a young lady at work who had a rash on her chest, okay? And she said to me, she was a nurse, and we got on very well. We always have banters. And she said to me, Dr. Warren, can you help me? So I said, what's the matter? She said, I got this rash and it won't go away. I said, oh, you're using steroid creams? She said, yeah. I said, oh, you've used quite a few steroid creams, haven't you? And it's still there. I said, yeah. So I said, oh, you could use all the steroid creams till now and Christmas. I think it was probably around about Easter time. I said, that rash ain't going anywhere. So she said, oh, what should I do? I said, if you do what I said to you, if you do what I say, in 10 days that rash will go away. I said, are you prepared to do what I say? She said, yeah. So I told her what to do. I said, don't do this. I said, don't. Oh, it was all don'ts. Don't do this. Keep this out there. Don't do that. Don't do that. I said, in 10 days, I said, she'll be off for a few days, and she came back. So I came back about a week later, just over a week later. No, it was about 2 weeks later. I came in the ward, and there was a group of nurses in a circle. I didn't see that she was in the middle because I walked up past the group of nurses. All I heard was, there he is. So, and I turned around, and she was one of the sisters. She said, oh, she said to me, I believe in natural therapy as well. It does work. So anyway, then I realized the person in the middle talking to them was the same nurse who I gave instructions to. And she said, but doctor, it came back last night. So I said, yeah, of course, because you did something naughty, didn't you? So she just smiled at me. Okay. Anyway, later on that day, she said, yeah. She came and pulled me aside and said, yeah, she had a burger last night, and it came back. So what I'm trying to say here is that the rash was just showing what's going on inside. So all I did with her is to say, look, if you stop certain foods, stop having certain intakes, that rash will go away. And obviously giving it a certain time for it to go away if you stop those specific habits. And it did. So we can be applying certain things, depending on what it is, all the time, but we need to sometimes just change our habits. Likewise, the same thing, there was a young lady she used to come in the mornings into the surgery, someone was working in general practice, again with the same kind of fungal rash. And she's had all the creams as well. I was saying, well, what are you doing? I said, what do you have for breakfast in the morning? And this was about the second time they came to me with this rash. So I said, what do you have for breakfast in the morning? She said, oh, then the husband said, oh, I bring a McDonald's for her every morning for breakfast. So I said, oh, here's our issue. Okay, and so that was fixed. Right? So what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of our ailments is due to our intake and what we're doing. We just need to have a think about it, and then we can make that change around as well. And there's so many stories I can give, just in terms of lifestyle changes, and it changed the person, changed their health around. Had one lady who came in, she was giving me a hug, she was hugging me, because all these years she was taking a Pacific medication. I just said to her, what do you think about your medication? I didn't tell her to stop. I said, what do you think about your medication? She said, oh, doctor, I'm trying to stop that. I said, oh, we could work together. And so we slowly tapered it down. We stopped and I told her what to do. When she came back, she was hugging me. She said, all these years she's been taking these medications. No one told her all she had to do is this. And she's so thankful, so grateful. She brought her husband. Can I bring my husband in? I want him to talk to you. So what I'm saying is that lifestyle changes, just simple instructions can change people's life dramatically. And we've got it. God has given us the 8 laws of health. And it's for us as people, to institute that into our lifestyle. And a lot of us don't believe it. Honestly, a lot of us don't believe it. You see, when we're adapted to a specific way of life, we just go with it. Okay, we just go with it. We just run with it. When we're adapted, we just run with it. So we don't have that sort of thing to, well, what else could we do? What else is out there?
Just a question on fruits and sugars. Could you sort of add some light? Because there are people who are saying that, well, all sugars are sugars, and including the fresh fruits and stuff like that, so we tend to neglect our fruits.
That's true. I didn't mention that as well. Let me just, if I give you an example of this, I know someone is a church sister who is a diabetic, and she loves her fruits. And she's been to see one of our really good doctors as well in terms of how to control her diabetes. And she saw him a few years ago, and her diabetes is still not controlled. She asked me to come, to see her. I saw her the other day, and she then said to me, the reason why it's not controlled is because she said she loves her fruits. And she showed me the big bowl of fruits there up there she has every morning. And even her children said to her, Mom, you're not going to control it because you're having all these fruits. There are certain fruits that have a less impact and have a what we call low glycemic level on our blood sugar levels, and these are usually the berries, like blueberries. But other types of fruits really can send our blood sugar levels up, and it becomes sort of uncontrollable. So there are two types of conditions, really, when we are unwell, that we should really try to avoid fruits. One is cancer, and then in some respects as well, diabetes, and go for a vegetable diet continually, and that will help to lower our blood sugar levels. If it's cancer care, it will help also to fight those sort of cancer cells if we do away with fruits. Those are kind of two states of health. There's others as well, because there's another story, but I know time is far spent, so I won't tell you. But in terms of, there's a lady who was really ill. She came to the church, gave us a few years ago. They came as a prayer group, and she told her story because she had a muscle disease, and she kept on praying, and God gave her the answer, just vegetables. And someone who was in another country, a doctor, said just vegetables, and all she had was just vegetables. And that condition really was a very, the prognosis is very poor, and she's still living up to today. So it just goes to show, that in certain health states, that vegetables is better for us than the sugars, the fruits. And unfortunately as well, a lot of the fruits, because we don't pick it off the tree, it sort of gets transported. It's not really in its full state as it should be as well. So just stick to vegetables if you have an health issue. The best fruits are, as I said, as the berry, like the blueberries. Berries, all the kind of berry fruits are exceptionally well. Raspberries. So it's called berry, then it's a good fruit source, so to speak. Okay. Is that being helpful? Hope so. And as I said, hope you just bear it in mind, okay? I can't emphasize anymore. Please just make sure you do your best to really take on board the health laws, and also try to do away with certain types of food in our diet, especially the high street foods. Okay, I'm not naming any names, but we have mentioned the name in here already. But honestly, do your best to stay from there and just keep to a healthy diet, because Jesus is coming soon. We're going into a social system. Our environment is changing quite rapidly. Diseases are coming around. We need our body to be in a fit state, a healthy state, to overcome anything that's coming. And we do so by making sure that we live according to God's principles. If we don't have if we are unsure of certain things that you may be doing, always give a call. There's a few good Adventist doctors around, are happy to talk to you, and also folks who practice natural therapy as well amongst us. So just give them a call. I'm sure they'll be able to give you some advice as well, the way to go. Thank you for listening.
we now have more knowledge about diabetes, what it does in our own bodies, first and foremost, how we can live much more healthily, by just avoiding a few of the not so good foods, and adopting better eating habits, which is we all can do it. We can eat less, do less picking in between meals. I'm not sure about eating the big breakfast in the morning, because someone's got to cook all that before I go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. So maybe we can work on that. But other than that, Dr. Warren, thank you for the presentation.
That's all right.
The increase in the knowledge that we now have. You have no excuse, I have to say. Can't say I didn't know, because now we are that little much wiser than we were before. Again, thank you for taking your time coming down.
No problem.
And presenting the presentation to us today on diabetes.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask us to stand as we finished. We're just going to pray. And straight after we've prayed, I'm going to hand out the evaluation forms, and if you don't mind filling them in for me.